Hello, my name is Mike Emery and I am the site administrator of the Cornwall Iron Furnace. Today we're outside the home of Mike and Susan Wenzel. They live in what was the former carriage house of the North Cornwall Furnace. Today's tour will be part of the virtual Christmas at Cornwall event. I hope that you enjoy the tour.
Our beloved coach house would never have been built if it weren't for Margaret Cassatt Coleman Freeman's plan for North Cornwall. She was born in 1820. She was the granddaughter of the original Cornwall ironmaster, Robert Coleman, and the daughter of Robert Coleman's youngest son, Thomas Bird Coleman. Margaret was very involved in the operations of the Cornwall Iron Furnace, the anthracite furnaces, and the Bird Coleman furnace, before initiating the construction of the North Cornwall iron ore furnace, which was built in 1872 and 1873, and she continued to be involved in its operations for over 20 years until her death in 1894. Margaret was definitely a woman ahead of her time. She followed in the footsteps of her grandfather, Robert Coleman, who opened the greatest chapter of the Cornwall Iron Furnace and the iron ore industry of Pennsylvania. Our family coach house, which we have lived in for 48 years, was constructed in 1878 to complement and serve as a functional outbuilding for the North Cornwall Furnace Gothic mansion, which was built for Henry Clay Grinninger and his family. Henry served as the superintendent of the North Cornwall Furnace for over 25 years, and that mansion still exists today. This is an historic photo of the Gothic mansion that was built for Henry Grinninger and his family when he served as the superintendent of the North Cornwall Furnace. It was of the Gothic style. Now, the architecture of our coach house is a stick-style Victorian with a gambrel roof line, which was popular in the 1860s and 1890s in the United States. It was inspired by medieval English buildings. There are contrasting horizontal, vertical, and diagonal boards that were applied to the outer surface with a cupola added for both a design element and for ventilation. Thomas Eustace Walters is believed to have designed the mansion, our coach house, and also the office of the North Cornwall Furnace. Walters was a longtime acquaintance of Margaret Coleman Freeman and her husband William. The two men met when Walters was commissioned by the U.S. government to draw plans to expand the nation's capital in the 1850s, at the same time that William Freeman was working in Washington, D.C. as the assistant to the adjutant general. Thomas Walters had previously been hired to renovate the Coleman family's winter home at Lafayette Park, Washington, D.C. in the 1950s. It's amazing that all three of the buildings are still standing 142 years later. Very few of wooden stick-style coach houses are still recognizable or still existing. Usually they were covered with siding, or the wood rotted, stucco was added, or they were just torn down. This historical photo shows the two large doors, like barn doors, on the left and right of the front at ground level. And when we enter the house, you will notice that my living room and my dining room are now in those areas that you see here in the photo. The building remained a coach house for 77 years, until 1955 when Matthew Tip Carriage purchased it and converted it into a duplex apartment. It was of a mid-century style. Now, when we purchased the home, my husband and I, in 1972, we decided to highlight some of the historic aspects of the building, especially the stick style with the brown, the high contrast of the brown beams against the white. Also, the entranceway is obviously different than what it was before, because the coach house, carriage house doors were at ground level, and you can see where our flower boxes are right now. That's where the main doors were. Welcome to our house. We are standing in the foyer of our home, and you're currently looking at a Christmas tree that's decorated with handmade Pennsylvania German stars, which are dipped in wax. It's a folk art Christmas ornament that I taught to my middle school art students for over 40 years while teaching art at the Cedar Crest Middle School. And those ornaments celebrate the history of Pennsylvania's German settlers. The ornaments are dipped in wax, beeswax also, to preserve them. We have always decorated every room in our house for the Christmas season. In the foyer, our daughter Elizabeth's German Nutcracker collection is displayed on our old piano. On the other side of our foyer, we have additional nutcrackers that belong to our daughter Elizabeth. And also on the vintage, and they're displayed on top of the vintage dentist cabinet. And along with those nutcrackers, we have some of my father's vintage tree toppers. My father, George Tater, loved decorating for Christmas, as I do. We've entered the living room. Note the large 13-inch wooden beams on the ceiling. They were covered. My husband and I decided to expose them to give this warm feeling to our great room. My husband also added a stone fireplace for a heating source, due to the fact that no one actually lived in here when there were carriages and horses in the coach house. The room contains my Santa collection and my reindeer collection, and my father's papier-mâché vintage houses, which we've had since the 1950s. They're actually called Putz houses, which comes from the German word putzen, to decorate. And also, when I was growing up, those vintage Putz houses graced the platform which supported our 1949 Lionel train display that my father put up every year. But now they proudly sit on our fireplace mantle. Our live Christmas tree, and we have 9 of them in our house, but they're not, the others are not live, is trimmed with all the homemade ornaments which I have received from my ornament exchange friends from Cornwall. And we've been getting together for the past almost 30 years. I also have reindeer collection. I have a snow globe collection. You may have noticed that my original artwork has been hanging throughout my house. And 30 years ago, I started off painting the historic buildings of Cornwall. And of course, the Cornwall Iron Furnace was my first print that I did. I'm very interested in history and art, and I taught over 40 years at the Cedar Crest Middle School. I was an art teacher. Also, the Noel angels are also from my father's collection. They're way over 50 years. They must be 70 years old or older that you're viewing on the organ. You're looking at the loft area of the coach house right now. We removed the floor because we wanted to have the heat from our fireplace circulate up to our upstairs. And you're getting another view of the German putz houses that belonged to my father. And of course, more of my deer collection. And obviously a live deer, or once live deer. We have two of them, my son's deer and my husband's deer. The fireplace makes it cozy. Now we are entering our dining room, which sparkles with my Christmas tree collection and more of my vintage Christmas tree toppers. And several of them belong to my father. Also, I have my collection of angels, both vintage and new. Another collection that really I enjoy is collecting old Christmas ornaments, the glass Christmas ornaments. You'll see them in a box right here on the dining room table, and I have them in glass bowls over on other pieces of furniture. A lot of our old Christmas balls belong to our grandparents, and my grandparents and my husband's grandparents. Between our dining room and kitchen is my angel tree. Many of the ornaments were made by my friends of Cornwall, and again, we had an ornament exchange that we met every first Saturday in December every year for almost 30 years. Also, next to the angel tree are vintage wax candle angels from the mid-50s, and they all belong to my father's collection. We even decorate our porch every year. It's a live Norfolk pine, and we made birds out of paper doilies, and we put glass icicles on them. We actually live out here from April to November because this coach house is not air conditioned, and we love the out of doors. This is our kitchen. We have a gingerbread theme throughout, especially the boy and girl, gingerbread boys and gingerbread girls. You were looking at more of our gingerbread boy and girl collection. Also, I created the leaded glass panels in my upper kitchen cabinets. There are 3 of them. We even decorate a small tree here in our laundry room. It has a patriotic theme to it with Uncle Sam's and stars and the red color. It's a room that I like to collect vintage kitchen things and art supplies and some of my original watercolors. We are looking at the double staircase in the foyer, and that replaced a spiral staircase that went to a loft area and upward to the cupola on the top of the original coach house. When the building was renovated in 1955 into two separate apartments, there was a wall there, and we removed the central wall, and we've now revealed the double staircase and the reason for why it's there. You are now in our upstairs, and you'll notice that our ceilings are much higher, and we like the exposed beams and of course the shelves that when you come down with the beams and it hits the side wall. Downstairs would have had the same height, however when it was remodeled, the coach house in 1955, they raised the floor so they could put the heating ducts in. Now this is our loft area. On the Christmas tree, there's 16 years of collecting the Hallmark hobby horse decorations, and it was from our daughter Elizabeth's collection. The hobby horse to the left was my husband's one. It's a good 60 to 70 years old when he was growing up. You are now viewing our living room from our upstairs loft. We had a tradition every year of waking our children when they were smaller in the late hours, and we would bring them here to the banister and they would look down into our living room where my husband would be dressed as Santa Claus, placing the gifts under the tree. We are now in our daughter's bedroom. We love the beams in all the bedrooms, the same as of the loft, and we like the shelves that we place pine every year, and we also put vintage glass Christmas balls. This room has a theme tree of woodland animals. This room also has the original barn flooring in it, where downstairs the floors were not original because of raising the floor. You're now entering our son Mark's former bedroom. It's now our granddaughter Evelyn's room. And we have a tree with a teddy bear and childhood theme. And every year we would put a teddy bear tree up for when our son was younger. This room also has the beams that we love and the shelf that we can decorate with the pine and the vintage glass balls. You're entering our master bedroom, and again, it has the features of the other bedrooms, the beams in the ceiling and the walls, and also the shelf that we're able to put the pine, and this time we used small Christmas village houses. Our tree features snowflakes with a red flare. You're viewing Santa, the reindeer, and the sleigh that my father built for me in 1955. Every year he would make a new ornament to put out in our yard, a Santa climbing up our chimney out of wood, and I think that was customary back in the 50s and the 60s when he created that. Thank you very much, everyone, for visiting our home. I'm hoping I've helped to instill the spirit of Christmas in all of you.